Hello everybody. Today we're going to be talking about building a retaining wall from start to finish. Now, when you're building a retaining wall, there's many steps involved. Anything can go wrong, and if it does, you're looking at a huge lawsuit. Let's talk more about what we need to do to prevent that and how to build it correctly. Now, one of the first things that you want to do when you get to the site is mark, lay out where this retaining wall is going and how high. What this does is it not only gives you a point of this is the process, this is the plan, but it relays it to the customer. This is actually where it's going to lie, and you can see that for yourself. That protects you and it protects yourself against putting this retaining wall up in a wrong spot. Now, the second thing that you have to do is excavate, whether that's by shovel or mini-X or even an excavator, depending how high and how long this retaining wall will be. Now, after you excavate, it's important to not just have the dirt there just shoveled up, aerated, but you need to tamp it down, and you need to make sure that whatever base that you put on top of it isn't going to settle in. Now, after you've tamped the dirt below your feet, next thing you're wanting to do is to install and to also tamp your base foundation. For this wall, we're using a closed grade gravel. It's 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch limestone. It's got some bigger granulars in there too to help with any erosion. What we do with this and why we love to use it is because when we put it down, we can maneuver it, we can scoot it along with the shovel just fine, easily, but the moment we compact it, it's not going anywhere. We can stand on it, we can shovel it. It's really hard to get that stuff up after it's been wetted and it's been tamped. Now, after we tamp this base, we need to check our grade with a transit level. What a transit level does is it allows us to shoot a laser against the horizon, and we can mark to the 16th of an inch exactly where we want our wall to be placed. Now, after you've measured where the base of your wall will come, for this case it was 5 feet, I'll measure 5 feet below where I want the wall to end. Now what I need to do is raise that base layer that I've already compacted and tamp it more until it gets right there at the base of where that wall needs to come. Now, it's important to measure and transit front to back, side to side. That way it requires less work when you actually set the block on there and get your actual level. Now, one of the most key parts of a retaining wall is the foundation and is the first layer. Every block after that is like stacking Legos. Now, it's important that your first course is totally perfect, and I cannot stress this enough, because if you do not have it totally perfect, your entire wall fails. It doesn't matter how perfect you lay the one on top of it or the one on top of that one. If your base material and your first course has gone crap, then your entire build has gone crap and you need to restart. You're now ready to start your second row and to cut your first block. Now, when cutting your first block, the important step to take into account is angling your blade level and to also cut deep enough. A pro tip is notice how your blade is moving, whether it's counterclockwise or clockwise. What this allows you to do is to know where the dust will blow. You don't want to look like Santa Claus right after cutting just one block. Now, once you have cut your block, it's very important that you stagger your blocks. This is what makes a wall a wall. If you set up parallel lines across your wall, it will be gone in a matter of days with just rain. Staggering your block gives the wall its strength. Now, after you've staggered your second course, you can really take it away from here, and it's very simple. Just simply keep on stacking and stacking and stacking. It's important to periodically remeasure your wall to make sure your wall hasn't become unlevel via a step on a block on the first course. Now, depending on how high your wall comes, you may need to involve a geogrid. What this does is it lays in between the block and it rolls back into the organic material. This prevents any caving out to happen. Now, not everybody uses these, but I prefer to, and I think it is professional to do so, is to use plugs. Now, these plugs are 2 to 3 inches, and they just simply slide in to the pre-made holes into your retaining wall block. What this does is it makes sure that you're setting the next course back properly, and it also locks in your block so it doesn't scoot around. Now, after you've gotten to a certain height, it's going to be important that you start backfilling. The material that I like to use most is 3/4 inch aggregate limestone, and it's open graded. Make sure your backfill material is open graded. There's no sense of putting down a closed grade gravel behind a retaining wall. Once you have put down a small amount of your 3/4 inch open graded gravel, it's important to then lay a weed fabric around a 4-inch corrugated pipe perforated. What this perforated pipe does is it allows water to move through the pipe and away from your retaining wall. If your perforated pipe has just holes on one side, it's important to flip your pipe around and make sure those holes are on the bottom. Now, once your weed barrier and pipe are laid, make sure to put more 3/4 inch aggregate inside that weed barrier and encapsulate it. Pin it down and then spread more 3/4 inch aggregate on top of that. What this weed barrier does is it makes sure no dirt from any sediment washing onto or anybody stepping on behind your wall will wash down into the pipe and clog it. Now, we don't just use a weed barrier, but we also use a sock around that pipe. After you've backfilled to a proper depth and you have filled your block with 3/4 inch aggregate, from there you continue and you set your cap. Now, before you permanently glue your cap down, you want to first make sure you have the template perfect. In order to do this, what you'll need is to set your first block and make sure the back of the cap comes with the back of the block. What this usually does is leaves a 2-inch buffer on the front and gives that cap an overhang. Now, how we measure and cut a retaining wall cap is we first put down that first cap, put it to the back of the wall, and from there we measure the distance between it and the wall or it and the retaining wall cap. Now, we take this measurement and we move it down to the bottom where that excess cap needs to be removed. After we've brought it down there, we make a couple of markings and give ourselves a little bit of leeway for cutting material. Now, when you're actually cutting your cap, the bigger the saw, the better. But if you have to settle for a small handheld tool, that's completely fine, as long as your seams are tight. Take your concrete saw, hold the handle, and place it gently on the top of the cap, and slowly slide it for that first mark. Make sure you don't cut too deep, because this is what we want as our guide. Once you've made that first score mark, we call it, then go deeper on your way back and make the actual cut. It's not important by no means to get this on the first try. You can go back and forth as many times as you please. Just, again, make sure that your caps are seamed together tight. A pro tip would be to loosen your hand and let gravity let the saw be level. Because of how fast this saw blade is moving, it wants to be as level as possible. Similarly to a wheel, if you spin it and hold it on one side, it will remain level. After you have your cap laid down in the position that you want them to be, then start side to side, removing your cap and placing down a caulk meant for concrete. It's important that you find a caulk that is made for concrete. I'll leave the brand I use in the description below. What this caulk does is it allows your cap to fuse with the block below it. Not really just gluing, but actually merging the two materials together. Carefully go cap to cap, gluing each one down. Once you have glued all of your cap down, look around and look at the mess that you've made. It's important to clean it up. You should never leave any trash from food, new materials, new tools laying around. It's very unprofessional. And if your job runs into another day, simply just clean it up and push your materials and tools to one side of the site. This will really clean up the project. Congratulations, you've just finished your first retaining wall, and now it's time to take some pictures. We use a drone, which we'll leave in the comment section below. This drone allows us to get aerial views of our projects and look more professional than the next landscaper. If anybody has any questions about this process or the materials, tools that we use, feel free to comment below and we'll do our best to answer.
1 is the loneliest number that you'll ever do.